Good morning. Welcome to your primetime news on Dhammika Ekanaika.
The news headlines on Gold FM.
Sri Lanka marks 7 years since deadly Easter Sunday attacks. The island could default on debt payments yet again, warns expert. Ports Minister is the new Energy Minister. Government is a victim of fuel mafia, claims opposition leader. Fake document claims Hiru sought police protection. Police deny receiving request. Legal action to follow. Trump threatens Iran with problems like never seen before.
The top story on Gold FM.
Today marks 7 years since the deadly Easter Sunday terror attacks took place in 2019, claiming the lives of 269 people. A series of solemn commemorations is expected to take place to remember the lives lost. A special service will begin this morning at St. Anthony's Shrine in Kochikade, led by Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith. Multi-religious leaders, foreign diplomats and survivors of the attacks will participate in the occasion. Police officials announced a special traffic plan around Kochikade to accommodate the large crowds attending the memorial services. Across the country, churches will ring bells at 8:45 a.m, followed by 2 minutes of silence to honour the victims. At St. Sebastian's Church in Katuwapitiya, the public will gather for an early morning mass and a candlelight vigil. A prayer march is also scheduled to take place this afternoon, starting from Maristella Ground and ending at the Katuwapitiya Church.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
Loss of foreign revenue can affect Sri Lanka's revenue accumulation targets as far as the IMF program is concerned. Further, this can seriously affect the island's credit ratings. These views were expressed by economist Talal Rafi as he commented on what the possible ripple effects could be on Sri Lanka due to the Middle East war. Speaking to us, he first touched on rising energy costs.
Fuel cost, that is going to be a hit because according to the IMF report last year, December, we were expected to spend around $4.5 billion in oil imports. So that was at a rate when a barrel of crude oil was around $70. So now that it's gone up by around 50%, so if this war goes on for another month, so even if the Strait of Hormuz is open today, production, shipping, all to get back to normal will take months. So definitely the hit is going to be well over $500 million. So that is one thing.
As far as foreign remittances are concerned, this is what Rafi had to say.
Half of our remittances come from the Middle East. So the longer this thing sustains, because most of those cities in the Gulf countries, they're dependent on food imports and desalination plants for water. If the strait is closed for long, then there would be food shortages there, which means the amount of people working there would have to be reduced. And already some have lost their jobs, according to some reports.
He then commented on the possible serious consequences due to the loss of essential foreign revenue due to the island.
Our reserves would start to come down because already today I saw in the papers the reserves have come to around $7 billion and even less than that. Reserves end of February was at $7.3 billion. Now it's come to less than $7 billion. And according to the central bank, the short-term drain on reserves would be in the next 12 months be around $2.14 billion. So that's going to be a bit of a hit for us because according to the December IMF country report, the projections for our reserves to be at the end of this year, it should be around $8.9 billion. If we dip further, it will become a reality that we would not be able to achieve that. The second thing is, by the end of 2027, our reserves are projected to be at $13.4 billion. So from $8.9 billion at the end of this year to $13.4 billion at the end of next year means next year in 2027, the reserves have to go up by $4.5 billion. And how will they go up? 1/3 of that increase, around $1.5 billion, is expected to come from an international sovereign bond, which we are expected to issue next year. If the current reserve reserves keep going down, it will become almost impossible to issue it next year because we have to get our credit ratings up. So that is where the major hurdle will come to Sri Lanka. For example, the reserves don't go up, then the confidence also starts going down. Because even currently, if you look at the rating agencies by the global trade rating firms, we are at perceived, so which means a real possibility of default.
Moving on with other local news, Anura Karunatilaka was sworn in as the Minister of Energy before President Anura Kumara Dissanayake. In addition to the energy portfolio, Karunatilaka also holds the portfolio of ports and civil aviation. His appointment comes following the resignation of Kumara Jayakodi as the Minister of Energy. Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa claims the current administration has become a victim of a fuel mafia, leaving both electricity and fuel consumers helpless. He said this while addressing the media in Tissa Maharama, and in the interest of clarity, we have refrained from dubbing his remarks.
බාල ගල්ලඟුරු ජාවාර තහවුරු කරන්න බාල ගල්ලඟුරු ක්‍රියාදාමය තවදුරටත් සාධාරණීකරණය කරන්න මේ රජය කටයුතු කරනවා. ජනතා විරෝධී ඉදිරි ඇමතිවරයාටත් ලේකම්වරයාටත් ඉල්ලාස් වෙන්න සිද්ධ. වර්තමාන රජය ඉන්ධන මාෆියාවේ ගොදුරක් බවට පත් වෙලා හමාරයි. HSBC ආයතනයේ වැදගත් තනතුරක් දරන ප්‍රධාන නිලධාරීවරයෙ ප්‍රශ්න කරනවා අපි ඉන්ධන මිලදී ගත්තු මිල ගණන් පිළිබඳ. ඔහු පෙන්නලා දෙනවා වෙනත් රටවල් එක්ක සංසන්දනය කරනකොට අපි වැඩිපුර මුදලක් ඉන්ධන මිලදී ගැනීම වෙනුවෙන් වැය කරලා තිබෙනවා කියලා බැරල් එකකට ගෙවන ප්‍රමාණය. මේ තුලින් අසරණ භාවයට පත් වෙන්නේ අපේ රටේ ඉන්ධන පාරිභෝගිකයන් නොවේද කියන එක අපි අහන්න කැමතියි. එදා මැතිවරණ කාලයේ කිව්වේ වරායේ ගොඩබාන මිලටම ඉන්ධන ටික පාරිභෝගිකයන්ට ලබා දෙනවා කියන කාරණා. නමුත් අදටත් ගහන බදු එසේමයි. අපි අහන්න කැමතියි මේ රජයෙන් මෙහෙමද ඔබ ඔබගේ බල ශක්ති ප්‍රතිපත්තිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නේ. ගල්ලඟුරු හරහා මේ රටේ 75 ලක්ෂයක් විදුලි පාරිභෝගිකයෝ අනාථ කරාසේම කරුණා කරලා මේ ඉන්ධන මිලදී ගැනීමේ ක්‍රියාවලිය තුල වැඩි වැඩියෙන් ප්‍රීමියම් අය කරනවා. ඒ වැඩි මිලක් හරහා තවදුරටත් මේ රටේ ඉන්ධන පාරිභෝගිකයෝ අසරණ කරන මේ වංචා සහගත ක්‍රියාවලියට යොමු වෙන්න එපයි කියන එක අපි මේ අවස්ථාවේ රජයට ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
A forged document is currently circulating on social media, falsely claiming that Hiru Media Network has requested police protection for its members. We wish to strongly emphasize that we have not requested police protection in any manner whatsoever, and that this is an entirely fabricated document. Police media spokesperson, Assistant Superintendent of Police F.U. Wootler, has also informed that this is a fraudulent document and that Hiru Media Network has never at any point requested police protection. We are already taking legal action against those responsible for creating this forged document. Furthermore, several fact-checking websites have independently verified that the document being circulated on social media is false. We wish to make it absolutely clear that forging documents and resorting to such despicable tactics will never intimidate Hiru Media Network. We also state that the threats, intimidations and insults directed at Hiru, a media outlet committed to serving the people, are dismissed with the contempt they deserve. Despite the threats posed to media freedom, Hiru has always carried out its duty as a people's media service for the nation, and no matter what threats or intimidations come our way, we remain fully committed to fulfilling our media responsibilities to you, our audience, without compromise. Additionally, in response to the letter sent by Minister K.D. Lalkantha to Hiru News, we will be sending a strong response to him through our legal team within the next 24 hours.
Now for some news in brief.
The Department of Meteorology warns of heavy rainfall exceeding 100 millimeters in several areas in the western, Sabaragamu, central, northwestern as well as Galle, Matra and Anuradhapura districts.
The business news on Gold FM.
And now it's time for a stock market update brought to you by Roshan Fernando of Capital Trust Securities.
Stock market snapped its fourth-day winning streak, uncertainty over the Strait of Hormuz and renewed on U.S. tensions weighted on investor sentiment. Dow share price index dropped 202 points to close at 22,570. The S&P 20 index also dropped 41 points to close at 6,222. Turnover was 4.1 billion rupees. This was lower than the year-to-date average of 5.5 billion. Trading momentum was led by SoftLogic Finance, Hikaru Beach Resort, SoftLogic Capital. Sector-wise, activity was concentrated in capital goods, diversified financials and banking counters.
International news on Gold FM.
US President Donald Trump projected confidence regarding potential negotiations with Tehran ahead of talks scheduled in Pakistan. Speaking on a radio program, Trump asserted that Iran faces unprecedented problems if it fails to come to the negotiating table. He expressed hope for a deal that allows the country to rebuild while ensuring it never obtains a nuclear weapon. The US President also denies being under pressure to make a deal with Iran ahead of the ceasefire deadline. Meanwhile, in a Truth Social post, Trump stated that Israel never talked him into a war. He added that the events of the 7th of October reinforced his long-standing position that Iran must never possess a nuclear weapon. Trump suggested that a change in leadership within Tehran could lead to a prosperous future for the nation, comparing potential outcomes to recent political shifts in Venezuela. However, prospects for a second round of negotiations with Iran still remains unclear. It is reported that US Vice President J.D. Vance is still in the US and has not yet departed for Pakistan. In the meantime, Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, stated that Iran refuses to negotiate with the US while facing military and economic threats. In a statement on social media, the head of the previous negotiating team in Islamabad claimed that Tehran spent the last fortnight preparing new strategic measures for the battlefield. Ghalibaf accused Trump of using a naval blockade and ceasefire violations to force a surrender at the negotiating table or to justify a return to open conflict. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that Tehran will monitor US behavior before deciding whether to proceed with further talks. He said this during a telephone conversation with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Meanwhile, foreign media quoting analysts report that the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran after the start of the war has driven a surge in demand for American crude oil. Unable to access Middle Eastern crude oil through the strait, importers have had to look for alternative suppliers. Data suggests 71 tankers known as very large crude carriers headed to the US to take on cargo, compared with an average of 27 on any given day last year.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Actor and producer Patrick Muldoon passed away at the age of 57. Reports suggest he suffered a heart attack. He is well known for his role as Austin Reed in Days of Our Lives and Richard Hart in the primetime hit Melrose Place. Beyond acting, he maintained a prolific career as a producer with storyboard productions and recently began work on the upcoming feature Cockroach alongside Chris Hemsworth.
Sports news on Gold FM.
The New Zealand under 85 kg rugby team arrived in Sri Lanka last night for a two-match series with Sri Lanka's national side. The opening encounter kicks off under floodlights at the racecourse grounds in Colombo on Saturday at 7 p.m. The series then moves to Kandy for the second fixture, scheduled at the Nittola grounds on the 3rd of May with a 4 p.m. kickoff. Sri Lanka will be led by Lasindu Karunatilaka. And that's it for now, but do join us once more at 8:30 a.m. for your news highlight. Bye-bye.